in this season of competition games, especially with a certain one that just happened over in France, there are a lot of ramifications for community and bringing people together. While good sportsmanship can bring people together, it can also tear people apart when factionalization and too much, shall we say, team spirit gets brought in. So let's talk about competition, strife, and community on today's Creations Pass. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I'm a non-binary sci-fi fantasy writer. I'm joined today by my wonderful husband, Brian.
Hello.
I've been working a lot on a not so super secret project for Wisdom's Cry. A whole bunch of stuff about Bridget is getting written up and copied in. I've also decided to grab a bunch of the prayers from the Carmina Gadelica and put them in there. It's been quite a project, so I'm a little toasty. Today, we're going to be talking about competition, strife, and community. These really go together, especially when we're thinking about this season of Luna. It is so traditional to have games. And back in the olden times, they actually had like full-on like chariot races and stuff, games that happened during this time of year. It's my understanding that there are still places in Ireland where they have fun fairs and competitions and stuff still to this day, which is awesome. But on a larger note, competition is not a bad thing. I feel like we need to start there. Competition in and of itself is not a bad thing. It can lead to all manner of bad things. It can really get out of hand really easily if not kept in check.
It is a tool. And like all tools, there is no moral attribution to it. It serves a function. It is a social tool used for individuals to come together around what they're competing over, to test themselves, to grow, to learn. It's also one of the ways that children learn skills later in life. It is a tool. There is no moral attribution to it in and of itself. But like you said, in today's society, a lot of the bad that comes into it is when people have those attachments.
I want to disagree.
Okay.
But only slightly. I do have a very moralistic view of competition, mainly because I feel that competition often comes into fields where it does not belong. That is a big problem. Now, I don't have a problem with poets battling each other. There's a long tradition of the Phila doing their poetic battles against each other. I have no problems with things like that. But when I see like an art show, how do you determine the best art?
Yeah, that's not the place for that kind of competition. An art show itself wouldn't be a competition. If you were to have competitive art event, like a person creating a culinary dish and then call that competition, that's not using the tool appropriately. It's like trying to use a screwdriver as a saw to cut a tree down. Like, you just, no, the screwdriver will do it, but it's going to be terrible for everybody.
Because the actual competition in a cooking competition is actually who made the favorite dish, not the best.
Well,
there isn't a best dish.
Yeah, the point of the competition is these individuals coming together in good spirit, pushing themselves, pushing their boundaries, testing and challenging their proficiency in the thing, and having fun doing it. And so technically, win or not is not the end game. That's not the end point. Yes, it's nice to be like, hey, I won this award or whatever. Back to the art example, the culinary example, those chefs that are doing that, using the tool properly, grow and develop their craft so much more. A lot of people do from proper competitive events, but so much of it's done for the wrong reasons, and I think that's where the problem comes in.
But see, that's a problem in framing. They're not competitive events. A competitive racing is a competitive event. You are all doing the exact same thing. There is a measurable standard as to who wins. We can try to be as objective as we want to be about art, music, food, any of these kinds of things, movies, right? We can try to be as objective as we want to be, but there is no actual objective standard.
True.
that can be applied there. It's always going to be a subjective standard. There are movies that I love that are arguably not great movies. I love the Godzilla movies, for example, and with a few rare exceptions that I would say are art, like are actual really good, objectively well shot masterpieces that have a lot of depth and meaning and things to say. Those are few and far between. I also like Godzilla versus Kong, which is a guy in an ape suit fighting a guy in a lizard suit. And it's silly, it's funny, it's fun. And if you don't groove on that kind of silliness, you're not going to enjoy that movie and you're going to rate it badly. And it's not objectively worse of a film. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
I've seen a lot of movies that are technically proficient. I'm not going to say the name of the filmmaker that I want to say, but there's a particular filmmaker that, for anybody who knows my film reviews, will immediately know who I'm talking about, who makes breathtakingly, stunningly beautiful movies. Almost every frame is a piece of art. They're gorgeous, gorgeous films that have no story, no characters, just stuff happening. They're empty, vacant shells that don't really do anything for me. But a lot of people like this particular person and like the movies that he makes. And this is where I think competition becomes problematic because, for example, politics. We're in an election year in the United States. Politics is not a competitive sport.
No.
It is supposed to be a debate over whether or not we want to do what this person's wanting, or that person, or this party, or that party, or what have you. We're supposed to be debating the merits of the positions put forward. But way too many people on every side, and I do mean every side because while we live in a two-party state, there are more than two factions. They're playing for their team. They're not actually looking at any of the broader questions. They're not looking at any of the bigger things. This is where competition really becomes a problem. I don't care if my team wins in a situation like that. I care if we make the country actually a better place. Will this actually make improvements? Who has the better plan for improvement? We see this a lot in church politics, especially, which is one of the things that frustrates me to no end with church politics. I don't care what your side is. We really shouldn't have sides. We're all, in name at least, worshiping the same God, even though that gets argued about in a way that is frustratingly common. We're all technically working towards the same end goals. But factionalism comes in. And this is the unhealthy side of sport, of competition, is factionalism. I have no problems with somebody who really likes a certain sports ball team and wants to root for that sports ball team. I do have a problem when language like, and I hate the supporters of the other team, or I hate the city of the opposing team or the rival team, or anything like that comes up. Why? That is unhealthy competition. There's nothing wrong with supporting your team.
Part of that, I guess, is when looking at the fruits that result from the competition, you can really tell if it's a good competition or a bad competition. Is it a good fruit or a bad fruit? Is the end result unity or separation? You can have sides in the structured frame of the competition, but in the end, the whole point is building community. Division, separation, factionalism is the end result. Then the competition has gone bad, is sour. Something is tainted in that fruit that has resulted from it and should be quickly evaluated, reflected upon, discerned to see what needs to be corrected so that it can result in unity and bring people together in community building. If people are coming together as a community, that's great, but if it's this community versus that community in the end, it's still not good. It's like the whole point of the Olympics. The whole point of the Olympics was to get these separate nationalistic states, before even nationalism was around, as these states were rising and self-identifying, us versus them. It was to bring them together so that there could be community, so there could be peace and healing amongst these two separate communities, so they could have inter-community interaction, healthy interaction.
You keep using the word unity. I think unity is one of the many misunderstood concepts in the world today. I particularly like what Hegel had to say about unity. It's something that I go to, and it's become almost a mantra for me, though this is my wording of what he said, because if you've ever read Hegel, Hegel never said anything simply that he could say in a lot of words. Hegel argues that you cannot have unity between similar or identical things. There is no such thing as unity between similar and identical things. You can only have unity in diversity. If everything is the same, if everything is too similar, what you actually have is conformity, not unity. And that conformity and unity are not the same thing.
Very different.
And while Hegel is not as accessible as some of his ideas should be for the general conversation, he's right here. The biggest problem with all of this is we tend to choose conformity and label it unity.
Very true.
And this is where competition can really be a problem, because we are using very arbitrary things. I remember when I was a kid and my dad was trying to get me into baseball. He was a big fan of the St. Louis Cardinals. He was trying to get me to be a big fan of the St. Louis Cardinals. I started asking questions like, oh, so this is the Missouri team. Like, yeah, this is the Missouri team. So the players are from Missouri. No. So the players are all from the St. Louis area. So some of them are from Illinois and some of them are from Missouri. No, they're from all over the country. Some of them are even international players. Why is it a Missouri team then? Oh, because it's in the city of St. Louis. Well, you could put anything in the city of St. Louis and say it's local. What makes it? I couldn't understand this idea, because if I'm supposed to have this regional affiliation with this event, this team, shouldn't it reflect the region? I remember saying to him once, if a college could field players from other schools, that doesn't make sense to me. They're not playing for their school then, they're just playing the game. I still have a bit of a problem understanding this idea of not having more localized player bases for sports ball teams. The problem that comes in, and what I didn't understand as a child that I was trying to get at, is this factionalism of this is the local team, when absolutely nothing about it made it local. The owners were not from the region. Most of the players were not from the region. The only thing that made it from the region is they played at a stadium in the region, technically. That didn't make sense. When you start thinking about how competition often works, unjust rivalries, if you will, and unjust factionalism often has some weird lie at the heart of it, some weird distortion in there, so that you have to believe, some cognitive dissonance that you have to accept to get into it. Now, I'm not saying that you can't love your local team because not all the players come from your local region. I was just, as a child, trying to understand, well, what made them local? Because if all these things are not local, what does that mean that they're our team? What does it mean for any of the things that we have this factionalism about? A political party, we say, shares our ideas. But does it? When you actually look at the political parties as they exist in the United States, you start looking at what people who are registered to that party think and believe on various subjects, and what the policy proposals are of that party. And this goes for all of the parties in the United States.
All two of them.
We only have two major
honest,
parties. This is also true of the Greens and the Libertarians.
But, yeah.
It's true for all of the political parties that we have here. They're a banner that people are rallying behind that aren't necessarily reflective of the beliefs of the people that are even within the group itself, which is strange to me, especially for the smaller groups. I can understand there being difference in a larger group because consensus has to be arrived at. But even for the smaller parties that we have, we see this kind of disconnect in there. We also see it from a religious standpoint in what do members of various churches and religious communities believe. What do their creeds profess? What are they told that they have to believe? The most obvious example of this is, especially in the United States, the majority of Roman Catholics in the United States are pro-choice, and the Catholic Church is staunchly pro-life. That's a dissonance there. And I get that they're coming from a top-down model, and I'm not wanting to get into all that. This ride or die that we have for groups and organizations that may or may not actually represent us. that we may or may not actually be a part of is a strange thing, and it's something we need to watch out for. I do not like attending sports ball games. I find them dull. I find them boring. Over the years, I've had friends that have competed in various leagues, and I love going to their games. Why? Because I'm there to root for my friend. I don't care about this amalgamated team of whatever, right? Because I don't know them. I have no connection to them. I do care about my friend who's playing on the team. And so I have a connection there. And that's where I think we really need to start asking ourselves and interrogating our connection with competition. What is our connection to this competition? And how is it breeding strife, potentially, in our communities? I am a member of several religious groups and orders, all of which allow you to be members of multiple groups. So there's no strife there. I have noticed in some groups I am treated differently because of my association with other groups that share 99% of their beliefs in common. 1 or 2% are different. And even those are just worded differently. They're not even really different. They're just different words are chosen. They come at it from a different angle or perspective. That is an unfair and unjust competition. You can be a member of both of these groups, all three of these groups. You don't have to choose one. That gets to the real issue here and how competition breeds strife. When we pretend, and often we are pretending, that we're engaged in a zero-sum game, when in reality, there are very few zero-sum games. Now, I'm sure you've heard this phrase, and just to make sure that we're all on the same page, checkers is a very good example of a zero-sum game. There are a set number of pieces on the board. Who wins? The person who captures the most of their opponent's pieces. Yes?
Yep.
This is how it works. That's a zero-sum game. There are only so many checkers on the board, and yes, there are some versions of the rules where there are ways to get pieces back that have been lost and blah, 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 blah. But there are only so many there. You are fighting over a finite resource. Most games are not struggling over a finite resource. There is no score cap. And when there is, there's an agreement on it. We're going to play rummy to 500 points. You negotiate it ahead of time. Most things are not zero-sum games, though they're often treated not only as if they're zero-sum games, but that all games are winner-take-all games. What is a winner-take-all game? It's a game where, guess what? The winner takes all. Nothing is left over for anybody else. The economy is often treated as both a zero-sum game and a winner-take-all game. Politics is often treated the same way. The problem is neither of these actually are. When you're having an argument with someone, which is a form of competition, there's not always a zero-sum in there. Sometimes there is. Where are we going to go for dinner? That is a winner-take-all game. Unless you decide to go your separate ways and not have dinner together, which is both sides losing from my point of view. Somebody is going to have to give up their favorite choice, or both people are, and you're going to have to compromise on a middle ground place to go eat for dinner. What movie are we going to watch tonight? There are compromises that can be had here. A tie or a compromise is not a loss. And this is the poison that an over-competitive environment puts into people's minds.
Competition used to create derision. It's bad competition. It's something, especially in the States, because the whole ties being a bad thing or being viewed as a loss, being taught to generation after generation after generation, has poisoned a lot of the minds into causing derision and strife when it's not necessary. It's why discourse or arguments competitively done amongst two individuals oftentimes nowadays are so tainted and become so poison-filled because of this fact they think it's zero-sum, when in reality, no, it's discourse. It's challenging ideas and sharing ideas and challenging the shared ideas amongst each other, amongst the parties involved in that competition.
If a good game is had by all, everybody wins.
Yeah.
Yes, the score may show something else, right? And there may be a trophy or a prize or something like that. And I'm not saying that those wins don't count. And I'm not someone who, though I'm going to be characterized as somebody saying just hand out participation trophies for everything.
A great example of this in pop culture is Great British Baking Show. I think this is part of why it was so popular, because it was a competition baking show. Yes, they were competing. There is a winner at the end, but in reality, all of the bakers win. They have all grown. They've all gotten stronger. A lot of community and camaraderie is formed amongst the members, fostering stronger community. That's a win.
It is a win.
And that's where all parties win.
That's really the struggle that we're having right now. This is really the issue that faces our country and our world more than anything else. We're competing over things that don't matter. We're still competing over oil resources when we need to be moving away from that. We're competing over whether or not settled science is settled science. I'm not one of those people that says believe authority figures because they're authority figures, but if the data is in, the data is in. Like, when enough people have checked and double checked and triple checked, the idea that everyone else is lying and only a few people know the truth, at a certain point, you have to realize that you're dipping into the well of conspiracy theory. But science is a competitive sport. It is. I have a theory, here is my evidence, and then there's this thing called peer review, which a lot of people don't understand what that is, but peer review is literally prove me wrong. And people tear through the data, they tear through the methodology that was used to not only collect the data, but to compile it and to figure out the results from it. Even after it passes peer review, that still doesn't mean it's true. That just means, okay, we haven't found any faults in it. If you really want to see how peer review in science works, go to your favorite app of finding information, whether that's a search engine or YouTube or something, and just search the phrase Spinosaurus. You'll see how science actually works. It is a long, protracted debate where evidence mounts over time. Was Spinosaurus an aquatic dinosaur? Here's a paper, passed peer review, says yes. Here's a paper, passed peer review, says no. Here's a paper comparing the two and found all kinds of flaws with both of them. Here's another paper that says this. There's another paper that says that. And this argumentation is the point of it. Here's my data. Here's how I'm using the data. Here's how I'm looking through the data. And when there is a rich, robust argument, you can see it. It's there. People, even who say, I can't question their data, they seem to have collected their data fine. Their methodology seems to be fine. But this doesn't seem to work for me. I don't know why, but this doesn't. You still see those dissents in there, even when they can't find an exact flaw to point their finger at. That's how real competition works. That's how real competition should work. They don't have to be wrong because I disagree. They could be wrong, but now the ball is in my court and I have to prove them wrong. I have to prove that something else is going on here. Something else is happening, that the data is not actually showing what they think the data is showing. That's how argumentation works. That should be how a lot of our political debates get answered. I have a theory. This is how things work. Then we put those theories into practice, called laws, bills, what have you, and we test them out. Did tax policy A affect the economy well or not? There is data. We have to be honest about what the data says, because some of my favorite theories have been found. Some of my favorite theories have been found wrong.
Oftentimes for me, a lot of my theories have been found, you know what? There's definitely good things here. There are huge glaring flaws. That
Needs further study.
Needs further study. Needs adjusting. And like loopholes needed to be closed up as giant loopholes.
These are things that we need to be bearing in mind and considering anytime we're entering competition. It's not life or death. We're not fighting in gladiatorial arenas, even though we like to use that wording. This isn't war. I'm sorry, your sports ball game is not war. And especially right now, hearing that language is very grating on me. You want to help keep me from caring about your sports ball? Keep using more analogies with everything that's going on around the world right now. No, This is not warfare. It was never a good analogy. It could be a good analogy. We know of several groups that have staged games to settle conflicts so that nobody has to die. I'm all for let's have a cricket match or a soccer match or some mutually agreed upon sports match instead of bombing a city to rubble. if we want to do that to solve conflict. But we're not doing that. Those stakes are not that high. And especially in our local communities and our families, amongst our friend groups, it's not that high. And with the advent of streaming and the competition that is supposedly there, it just keeps getting ratcheted up and up and up. Instead of building community, instead of building us up as we're all leveling up our skill, we're breeding more and more dissension. Except for where we aren't. And there are beautiful places where we're not, where people are sharing what they've learned. And here's how I did this. Here's how I made this happen. And there's a whole vibrant community of people doing that as well. But we need less strife. We just do. We have enough of it. Most of it that we do have is unnecessary to begin with, but that's a whole other argument for a whole other day.
To go back and summarize all of this, the secret to competition is we are all secretly competing for ketone to make good and to make it better, make good better. That is actually it. That is the secret of competition. Two different opposing sides or more or groups to make the whole thing better.
Yeah. That's what I actually loved about the Apple Top 100 Albums of All Time list. And that's in the way they phrased it. These aren't the best albums of all time. They're the most influential. They're people's most favorite. Yeah. They did not put forward a criteria when they sent the ballots out. However you want to rank these could just be your personal favorite. The ones you just load up your library and see which ones you've listened to most over time and put them down on the list. They put forward no objective criteria. Anybody could put their own things on the list. And while I could argue for things that I love that I would definitely have had on the list, or things that were on the list that I felt should have been higher for various reasons, even the albums on there that I don't like, I can't argue with them being on there. It's because they're not trying to instill a false dichotomy onto this. It's not, these are the greatest albums of all time. No, what is the greatest album of all time? I have no idea. I don't even know how to even start contemplating that.
Subjective art again.
Yeah.
The beauty of the competition was in participating is I had certain biased beliefs challenged. I was able to make those better.
It wasn't put forward as a competition. Their top 10 are not the greatest ever. A lot of what the conversation was around it, because they put out a really lovely podcast to go along with it, was, why is this here? Why did this show up here? And I kind of think it would be fascinating to do a ballot like that every 10 years or so, to see how it changes over time. Do things go up, go down? What new things get added over time as new music's being made? What things get lost? What old things get rediscovered and get brought back up to the top? That's an interesting use for something like that. But most lists like that are just a vanity project that a bunch of people get into a room and just pick things, put them into an arbitrary order. And again, I'm not saying their methodology was perfect. I'm just saying it's a very interesting way to do this in a non-competitive way. That actually did create a very competitive list. I didn't actually see a lot of strife about it. Usually when a top 100 list like that comes out, there's a lot of arguing. I didn't actually see a lot of arguing this time. I find that fascinating. I hope you got something out of this. This is something we wanted to talk about, and it's not an easy topic to get into. And it's one that we might revisit again next year at Lunasa and maybe find a better way in or a different way in. Let me know what you think. How do competition, strife, and community work? How should they work? And how can we eliminate more strife from our lives? Until next time, may blessings and light fill your life. Amen.
Amen.